Welcome to the show. My name is James Nielsen Watt, and in this show, we interview interesting, inspiring, and successful people so you can learn the secrets to success and can play the game of life, business, health, and happiness better. And the philosophy we take here is if I'm leveling up my game, you get to level up yours as well. So get ready to listen to some inspiring people who have figured out how to have success in all areas of life: health, happiness, wealth, business. We're going to be interviewing them in this show so that you can learn the secrets to success that they share with practical advice that you can take and use today. So if you enjoy the show, please subscribe, please leave us a review, and please share it with your friends, because if I can help you and you can help others, then we can help more people together and we can all level up our game together. My guest today is Doug Ellin, the creator of HBO's Entourage, host of the Victory Podcast, Emmy Writers Guild, PGA and BAFTA Award nominee, as well as BAFTA and PGA Award winner. Welcome to the show, Doug. Super excited to have you on, my friend.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'd love it if you can give us some background. I know a bit about you, but I'd love for our audience to know some more about you as well.
What can I tell you? I'm Doug Ellin. I have been in Hollywood and the entertainment business for 30 years now, which is crazy because I don't really know where the time has gone. But anyway, I started as a stand-up comedian. I've made several independent movies, and then I created Entourage. Now I'm doing a couple of podcasts like you are, and I just shot a new show that I'm wearing the hat on right now that we just finished, wrapped last week. So that's pretty much my life at this point.
It's not something, well, let me ask you, is it something that you sort of just fell into? You were kind of mopping floors and decided to start making movies, or how did it sort of all begin?
I mean, to be honest, I was in college and I loved movies and comedy and my whole life, but I never really took any steps to head in that direction. I didn't know anybody in the entertainment field at all. And when I was finishing college, I was supposed to go to law school. And about a month before I graduated, I just started realizing there was no way I could go to law school and I needed to figure something else out. So I told my parents I was moving to LA to do stand-up comedy, which they thought was insane. And that's what I did. The day I graduated college, I left for LA. I knew one person in the whole city and I started from there.
Comedy is a tough gig, right? It's not
stand-up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is a tough gig, and especially for me, I'm not really, I'm not a club person or a person who likes to be out late at night. So, you know, when you're doing stand-up comedy as an amateur, when you're 21 years old, you're going to clubs and seeing if you can get a spot at 4 o'clock in the morning in front of 3 people. Now it's hard at any time, but that type of lifestyle makes it even more difficult. And obviously highly competitive and tons of people all rolling through that arena, but still fun. It was a fun time in my life. Got to meet some good people and realized what I wanted to do, which was make films and television. So I started doing that. I got a job I was in the mailroom at New Line Cinema, which is a big film company. And then I raised some money to do a short film and made that film, ended up selling it to Showtime. They aired it actually. And I used that to get into film school. So I went to the American Film Institute for a year, came out and made my second film, which was a little independent movie that we sold and still plays around the world today, which is wild. And then just kept going from there.
What was the transition point for you into coming up with Entourage and creating it and then actually getting it made? Like, that would have been interesting.
Well, I mean, I had made a couple of movies already that both were independents that sold to studios. And then my manager was the same. He represented Mark Wahlberg also. And I knew Mark for years, and they were just talking about Mark used to follow his friends around with a camera. And they came to me and said, we want to do a scripted show about Mark and his friends. And that's kind of where it started. I obviously had to kind of make it my own and think about, you know, how I could relate to that world, which was not a world I really was familiar with. I'm not really an Entourage member or someone who likes to live off of anybody else. And I had to bring my own spin to it, which Mark was great in allowing me to do that. And we then went and pitched it to HBO, which bought it. And then it took about 2 years of writing and rewriting and doing it over and over and over until they finally said, okay, let's go. So
were you surprised with how successful it became?
You're always surprised, with what's going to happen. The movie I had done before Entourage, Kissing a Fool, was an independent movie that got picked up by Universal Studios. And for about 5 minutes, I was the hot comedy guy in town, and everybody was offering me all this stuff. And then the movie was released and didn't make the amount of money that people wanted, and I couldn't get any job. So I was surprised by that, and equally surprised by the success of Entourage. I mean, when it started, HBO was really the Emmy-winning show, network that was making all this high art. And the night before we aired, the executive that I'd been working on the show with for 2 years told me to prepare myself for terrible reviews because this show was not, kind of on the level of what they do. And so I woke up the next morning thinking I was going to be a panic. And then the New York Times said we were the smartest show on TV. So of course that surprised me. It surprised me what she said, and it surprised me what they said. But, you find a middle ground. I think, I've always been confident in what I do. You can't control how people react to it. I don't necessarily look at some things I did that people liked as better than some things that I did that people didn't like. So I kind of try to balance it to the best of my ability, when really the truth is most of why you want all that success is so you can keep going and you can keep working and you can provide for your family and your kids and everything like that. So, but I think it is always surprising to see the reactions to things that, people work really hard to make television shows and movies, even bad ones. Not a lot of shows get made by people going, I don't give a shit. So, a lot of time and effort and passion goes into almost everything that you're going to see on TV, a lot of money as well. So it's interesting to see what people say and what they don't say, Well,
that's true, right? You're putting in a ridiculous amount of efforts, and then the whole thing could just rug gets pulled out from under you because some people just don't like it.
Yeah.
At that season of the world at that time.
Yeah. And also, culture shifts happen. I mean, that happened with us when the movie came out. I mean, the world. I don't know if it's the world was changing or the media was certainly changing and attempting to change the world to the best of their ability. So I think, while we benefited at a lot of times from the culture when we were on the air, it started shifting and then it changes, and you got to adapt and you got to figure out what to do,
It's a weird duality because, like you said, you don't want to be creating it for others. It's your own passion. You're doing it for you. And if you're always focused on what they're going to think, your happiness is in other people's hands. But at the same time, you're literally in an industry which has to satisfy the audience at the same time. Yeah.
I mean, look, I feel good about the fact that I've never written for anybody else except the people who are paying the bills, because you have no options. So, I've never thought, I wonder if an audience will like this. I try to entertain myself. Then I let a trusted group read it and give me their thoughts, and I'll adjust as such. And then obviously if someone's paying you, you have no option. You either listen to them or you don't make it. It's just that simple. So HBO had a lot of input on Entourage pilot for sure. Some of it great, some of it not so great, but it ultimately led to where we were.
So did you said that the movie didn't hit so well? What was the intent with the movie coming in?
Well, you know what? I hate to even say it didn't hit so well, because I'm like, and I talk about this all the time, but I'm sitting here with the test scores from the movie are next to me, which means the studio gets theaters together, they bring people in and they test them. We tested through the roof. The president of Warner Brothers told me, frame this, which is why it's framed, because you'll never get this good a score in your career. And then the exit polls for the weekend, which means people walk out that paid their money and they check, what they thought of the movie. We were the highest exit poll of the weekend. We beat the movie that we got crushed by monetarily, but the people who went and paid actually liked it. But what happened was the critics, I mean, they just went after this thing. All the critics that loved Entourage suddenly thought this was something different. And the truth is, I didn't want to do a movie in the first place. But if you liked Entourage, there's nobody who's going to tell me that the movie was not in line with that. And I always like to think, I know you're in New Zealand, but Australia, we were the #1 movie for 2 weekends in a row. And the Australians, who I love, just like you guys, they appreciated it. And I also think our core audience appreciated it. And I think that the shame for me is, #1, we didn't see the Me Too movement coming. And every review was about misogyny and white privilege and all this shit that honestly, I didn't even know what they were talking about when it came out. And now I see that they, this group of people, they definitely started moving the needle in this direction. But it started, when we came out, was probably 2 years before the Me Too movement. But you could read the reviews and really feel that something is happening. And so that was interesting. But the movie was a real attempt to be as close to season 1 of Entourage as possible. And I still stand by the fact that I think it was. To me, even though Entourage and I was very, it was very important to me to shoot it as cinematically as possible when we were on the air, that it really looked like a big movie as opposed to a small TV show. But at the same time, I never wanted to make a movie. And if HBO Max would have been out at that time, we would have been released on HBO Max, and I think the movie would have been wildly successful. So it'll always bum me out, but timing is, you got to deal with it, and you got to work with what you got. So
100%. With Entourage, I'm assuming one of your most successful endeavors. What was the hardest part of that success? So you're doing your other things, which are doing well, and then you do you do Entourage, which blows up. What was the hard part of success related to that?
I mean, I hate when people talk about their hard parts of success. There's no hard parts of success, writing for me, whether it was Entourage, where I'm making a ton of money, or whether it was the show that I just did that I wrote on my own for free and I'm going to make it myself. They're hard. Writing is hard, at least for me. And that's why I say, whether people ultimately like it or not, the effort goes into it either way. I've never written a script that I was just like, here you go. So it's a lot of work, and production for me has always been easy. When you can get on a set with the right cast and a script you feel good about, that's a joy. But the writing process of coming up with, let alone 96 episodes, even one episode, is always challenging. So, as I started this new show now, I'm already having nightmares about, the rest of the scripts, which don't exist, because that to me is the most challenging part of any show or movie. The blank page is where you start, and there is nothing without filling that in and filling it in properly. So,
it sounds like something that I do, which is really trying to detach from the outcome. Like when people talk about the difficulties of success and this, I think it's because they're enrolled in what is coming of the actions, rather than just being in the actions, doing the things, enjoying the process, and whatever comes, but I'm detached from the outcome. Because for me, if I'm attached to the positive, you can't help but be attached to the negative. And so if I want to not be affected by the negative, I got to detach from the positive, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously if you can do that, you can do that. When I was younger, obviously there were a lot of things I needed money, a lot more than I needed today. So, you are more anxious and you are more desperate for things to work out. But the new show that I just shot, that was my entire mindset, was to enjoy every minute of it and to not worry about what happens next and to not worry about what anybody thinks of it, and to do the best we can. And so far through the process, this has been the most rewarding experience of my life creatively. So I think if you can do that, obviously, I think the work will actually get better as well, but your life will get better because, when you say what was the hardest part of Entourage, it was just keeping it going and not. Again, there's people who run television shows in their sleep and they can do 7,000 episodes. And you have these lunatics like David E. Kelly who can do 9 shows at the same time. It's really not how my brain works. And I kind of am focused on one thing and one mission at a time. And, it's challenging to come up with stories, especially as you go on with the show. It gets harder and harder to make things unique or original. But I think every show has that challenge. But again, the writing part is the hardest part of the whole thing for me.
What is your creative process? Like, do you go out and get inspired by things? Do you sit in a dungeon somewhere? Like, what's your way of finding that?
It's hard to say. I think for writers, like I don't really believe in writer's block. And I think that sitting down at a computer and typing is the way to go. And no matter what you're doing, if you start typing, things will come. And I don't go seeking out inspiration. I'm very observant. That's how I was with stand-up comedy. It's why I think I was able to show Hollywood in such an accurate light, because I am observant of what's going on and I don't really live it. Like, I didn't live the Entourage lifestyle. I've never been that guy. I've never been the partier or the club guy or any of that stuff. So I think I watch things, and I watch them carefully, and I listen, and I see things. And, you know, for the last 2 years, I've been doing a podcast, and that essentially was my life, which Entourage was my life as well. Not a movie star, but struggling in this town, seeing all the bullshit that goes on. And now, as I've done this podcast, I've seen the whole way Hollywood has kind of shifted, which one of the reasons I didn't want to go back in. Everybody's been asking me to do another version of Entourage for years. But one of the reasons I didn't want to go back in is I wanted to see something that would be really different. And I think the time now of Hollywood, of movie making, of celebrity is so different than it was in 2003 that I'm actually got motivated and inspired to do this new show. So, but I don't seek it. I guess I let it come to me, you know?
So with that transition, what can you tell us about your new show?
So the new show is, it's really a look at what I've been living for the last couple of years, which is doing podcasts. But I got Charlie Sheen and Kevin Dillon and Kevin Connolly. They're going to be playing themselves, all three of them. And it's going to be, you know, everyone's like, oh, is it Curb? And Curb, I love. Larry's one of my idols, obviously. But this is going to be the way Entourage was realistic in the first season. Some people actually thought it was a documentary when they didn't know who the actors were. They were like, what is this? And you know, I feel proud about that because it was so highly scripted, but this is going to be so ultra real and authentic to the lives that we're living, that Charlie's living, Kevin Connolly, Kevin Dillon. Kevin Connolly started a podcast studio about 4 years ago. And he's this, you know, actor who's now transitioned to be this businessman, and he's running this world that he's trying to figure out and dealing with all of these kind of crazy celebrities coming into his world now. So I think it's going to be really, really interesting, you know? What's
your expected sort of launch date?
When we don't have a launch date because we just shot a pilot. I came up with the money myself. We wrote it ourselves. I got 40 people from Entourage, crew, cast, etc., to come back and work. And we just shot a pilot. So now we locked the cut yesterday. We'll start doing a temp sound mix, and then I'll start showing it to people. So I have no launch date. Obviously, we have to get someone to pick it up and then write however many more episodes and shoot them. But right now we have one episode that I couldn't be happier with. You know, I think we really did something special, something different, and I think people are going to see that. So we'll find out, though.
That's exciting. Yeah. So tell me about your podcast. You have a podcast, right?
Yeah. So I have two, but Victory, the podcast I do with Kevin Dillon and Kevin Connolly, which, you know, Connolly's idea was to do an Entourage, you know, revisit show, which I was not all about doing that. And we've found a happy medium. That's why we went with Victory as opposed to the Entourage podcast. But we talk about everything from our lives to the show, to new things, to this new show that we're working on. We started doing live shows. I mean, we did a couple of sold out shows, like live talking, like doing a podcast on a stage. So it's been really, it's been pretty amazing. And the response has been pretty great. I think we just hit like 12 or 13 million downloads. And it's been kind of a resurrection for all of us. I think it's given a chance for people to see who we are. We've brought all the cast members from Entourage back, all the women, so they can talk about what the show really was and not the bullshit narrative that I was discussing earlier, and how much the show changed everybody's lives and all of that stuff. But it's really like Entourage. It's three good friends sitting down to talk and do various different things. We've had great guests, you know, from Charlie Sheen, who's going to do it next week again, so we can talk about this show, to some of the best athletes in the world, to all the cast members of Entourage, Mike Tyson, and some other people. So
how do you see podcasting fitting in these days? Like, I've been, you know, I'm young as I say this, right? But in the kind of business space, and when I was scrounging around finding information on how to grow my businesses, I was always hearing about podcasting and people doing podcasts. And then it sort of started to really take off. How do you see it sit now? Do you see it being a bit of a trend for a lot of celebrities and people to get it and start podcasts that are going to just die off? Do you think it's a sort of a new medium? Where do you see it?
Well, I think like social media was, I think this is another way. And again, what speaks to the new show is the new way of communicating and the new way of branding yourself and the new thing that people want almost more than they want to watch Brad Pitt in a movie. They want to know about Brad Pitt, who he is in real life. They want to know what's going on behind the scenes of his life. So I think that a podcast, and again, whether you put on a performance or whether you are authentic to who you are, I think it's another avenue for people to find you, no matter what it is, whether you're a celebrity, whether you're a dentist. I think it's another way for people to get information about you and find out who you are. So I don't think it's going anywhere. I only think it's going to grow. Obviously, the numbers are so ridiculous that it's hard to find, a podcast. There's 10 million of them on Apple, I think, or something absurd like that. But at the same time, I do think it's a really essential tool. I think athletes, it really gives them a forum that they can speak to without having to worry about how the press will change it. And I mean, it's just all of it to me that's happening now. While social media has a lot of scary elements to it as well, obviously, everything that's happening now is giving people a chance to voice who they are without being filtered by somebody else. Now, I know like the censorship that they're trying to do and the things that are happening, obviously not speaking about that, but I think that we're in a good time for people to be able to be heard who might not have been able to be heard even 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And a lot of the Hollywood gatekeepers, the agents and the studios are becoming less and less relevant because people are just able to create without them, So I find it really interesting.
No, I agree. I enjoy the fact, and I'm seeing that with some people that I follow starting shows and whatnot. And there isn't that same level of creative barrier. You can just go and start a podcast, buy a mic, interview some people, have some chats. And you spoke to a really good point, which I agree with, which is that element of authenticity, right?
Yeah.
You can actually hear and see what the people that you like to follow are thinking, doing in their lives. And so you can have a series of movies and then you can have the actor on and actually kind of meet them a bit more and build more connection.
Yeah. And I think that's what we do on our podcast. And you get a real glimpse behind the scenes of who Kevin Conley is, who Kevin Dillon is, and all the guests that we bring on. So it's fun.
Do you think that it's also showing up more as kind of like a counter to this sort of inauthentic fake news, if you will, censorship, that sort of thing, where
of course
we're being shielded, but now we're being brought back to actually who these people are and we can connect with people?
Absolutely. And I've spoken a lot yesterday. I just had a thing. I've got someone on Instagram, like, making death threats to my kids, and, Instagram doesn't do anything about it, but they've censored jokes of mine that they didn't find funny or that they thought were offensive or whatever. And I think the podcast, again, Joe Rogan, whether you like him or not, agree with him or not, it's like they can't cancel him. If this was 10 years ago, he might be literally unemployable. And now he can speak to who he wants to speak to. We see some of the stuff that happens where the news does censor things that ultimately end up being true, which is extremely frustrating. And they don't seem to have any ramifications for that. So it's a crazy time, and I think it is a little bit of the Wild West, and how it'll shake itself out will be interesting to see. But again, I think it's a great time for creative people to have outlets. I do another podcast called Hollywood Ways, and I had a big influencer on yesterday. His name, it actually airs today, but his name's Adam Wahid. And, he was an actor who couldn't get a break, and he just started making his own videos. And now he's got 30 million followers. I put him in the new show. Bill Maher put him on his podcast. The CBS Sunday Morning does a piece on him. And all of a sudden, a guy who may have quit the business 10 years ago with the same amount of talent that he has, which is a lot. And I think now there are just so many ways that you can go do things and you can get them out there without needing anybody else. And I also, to your point, though, it is a way to speak against the news. It is a way. I love the fact I have critics when they say shit about me, I can now say stuff back. I don't have to sit there and go, oh, you're some hack in your apartment who doesn't like my movie and you're going to sit there and trash me, you know? And now you can speak back and it's nice. So I like it.
And that's what we're seeing with Joe Rogan, right? There was some issues, CNN, etc. And then Joe can just go, hey, I've got a ridiculous amount of views, more than you. Let me say some stuff. And we're seeing that. We're seeing the effects of that, right?
Well, it's, you know, it's wild, which who determines what's right. I mean, CNN, which is, again, I guess I'm more of a liberal. I hate to say it, but CNN is the biggest full of shit network. And I've been watching them for 2 years make this country fight with each other every single day to the best of their abilities. And, you know, I think that it's a sad place because you do have this kind of joined up group of the mainstream media that kind of almost works together to say the same thing over and over and over, and to quiet the other side, which, listen, the other side is often insane. But I think that people have to be smart enough. You know, I was talking about, like, one of the things that Instagram like suspended my account for was I put some joke up that I reposted it. I took someone else's joke about COVID. During COVID, Arizona beaches were packed. Now you're in New Zealand, but anyone in America knows there's no beaches in Arizona. So it was a joke, obviously. And I got censored for COVID misinformation about so many things that, you know, but they decide what works for them and what narrative they want to push forward. And it's pretty amazing to see. So
it's, as you get older, you see more things, you notice more patterns. And you start to see things and you go, that doesn't seem right. I'm not sure why that would be allowed. And then sure enough, it shouldn't have been. Like, there was things being spoken about the written case, for example, that kid. And you couldn't speak of him. You couldn't show any support, etc. Whichever side you fall down, like, I don't want to get weird about it.
Yeah.
But that there was censorship happening that turns out was incorrect. And various things that were said about him were true, and they were caught with their pants down. And it's
no ramifications, though. It doesn't matter. And, you know, it's the same thing. I mean, it's why I am down the middle and always have been. I'm a reasonable human, but, you know, Donald Trump, who I do believe is the worst president and one of the worst humans to ever lead America. But Joe Biden would get on TV and say, if you get vaccinated, you can't catch COVID, even though they already knew that wasn't true. So if Trump would have said that, they would have tortured him forever. The Biden thing, it disappeared. That's one of 10,000 things. And it's almost like how similar they are, but Biden, you know, speaks a little nicer, but they both have these fucked up children that the news decided to, one torture and one kind of make it go away, which now, you know, even today, there's an article about Biden that the New York Times is finally saying that stupid laptop was true. And when the election was happening, they were making sure that you weren't going to know about it. And it's very frustrating because it's hard to know what to believe. And, you know, when we're getting into wars, which I think, you know, look, all good people do not want anyone dying anywhere in the world, but the media can start spreading information to get you riled up about things that, you know, we don't know. We know we fought in Afghanistan for 20 years thinking we were doing something good there, and we know it did nothing except for cost a lot of money, and they're actually in worse shape than they were before. So it's really a tough thing, and I think the idea that more people are able to communicate is a good thing, because it can get the word out that at least there's another side, even if it's made up, that you can analyze and you can kind of go, okay, what is the truth and what is the smart thing for us to be doing? And do we trust the people that are leading us? So,
well, the positive that I see coming out of all of this is that you've got sensationalist media having to show up just to try and get ratings. I've read articles and the title was Elon Musk's rocket crashes into the moon, right? And this is on a legitimate news site. And I go, all right, this is going to be hilarious. And I go and read it, and it says, no, a part of one of his rockets happens to go into the moon. It's first time ever, but there's millions of pieces of crap in space, and it just happens to be his one. But they're trying to trigger us, right? You're having this because they're trying to actually get views because Rogan's, let's say, taken them all, right? And so that's going to die, and you're going to be left with I think the only way for them to survive is actually to go back to being truthful news, because then people will see all the quote unquote crazies and go, why now I need truthful news, and they can kind of come back to it.
It'll just, you know what, it'll never happen. And I don't know, again, truthful news is from whose perspective. And sometimes they're not lying, but they're giving you a perspective of what they want you to believe. And I know we're going like deeply political here now, but there's no question that the media was biased against police. And there's no question that they built this country for the last 2 years to hate the police. Now, I think anyone who's intelligent knows there's bad police officers and there's good police officers. I think there's plenty of people who know, if they're smart, that when fights happen, bad things happen. And chances are, if you are fighting with someone who has a gun, something bad might happen. So I think that the idea of that America was willing to allow a defund the police to the point where people were literally going, we shouldn't have police anywhere. You go, okay, are there really people who believe this? Or is this some fucking nonsense that is trying to keep us watching the news all the time? And then to watch the other side, watch January 6th and basically dismiss it, you just go, they're all fucked up and they were all fighting for whatever they want. But the other side was dismissing burning police buildings down and burning businesses down. And there are literally people going on the news and going, well, who cares if their property gets burned? Big deal. Some kid was shot in Iowa last week. I mean, it's just a sad thing. And you can see very quickly how few people can control the world. I mean, Putin could destroy the world right now. I mean, he really could. And he's one guy. And I got to assume, which is why it's so sad. And we see how we build up now. Oh, we hate the fucking Russians. We hate the Russians. Most of the Russians who are probably fighting are just kids who are being told you have no option but to do this. If you don't want to do it, you'll either go to jail or you'll die in this country. So I think it's really scary when we have these fucking nuclear weapons now, and you have lunatics like a Trump or like a Putin who just have these egos that you don't know what they're going to do. And I think it's somehow important, at least in our country and free countries, to try to really make sure you're listening to everything and finding out what the right answers are. So anyway, let's get back to some comedy, because nobody wants to hear me talk about this shit,
I agree with what you're saying. And I think I want to, for myself more than anything, preface the true news thing. What I think is most important is exactly what you said, where information's being shared in a way that isn't constantly being tainted or some kind of agenda, because the same piece of news said on a different news channel will be displayed differently because it fits the narrative of that.
Absolutely. I mean, look at it. I mean, I watch this good news movement all the time on Instagram. Imagine that was a TV channel, but then you watch the news and they're like, and it sucks. Police kill somebody, a lead story. Okay. How many people did they arrest that day that they didn't kill? How many people did they kill that were actually just sitting there going, hey, police officers? So I just think that we are creating such a fucked up world. And I don't know about New Zealand, but the United States has certainly come a long way on race in the last 30, 40 years. And I know unequivocally, I'm certain that the problem in this country is financial inequality, not racism. And I think that there's a large portion of people that are making racism a bigger problem than it was 5 years ago, and making everyone look at each other like, you're Black, you're Asian, you're Jewish, you're this. But the fact of the matter is, the thing that people really want is to be able to feed their children and to live a decent life. And I think, of course, there's always the bad people who just hate people for no reason. But I think for the most part, that's what people are concerned about. And we spend no time on that at all. We spend all this time on, how we can create more issues between each other and cause all sorts of fucking problems. So, but I don't know what the answer is. But I feel like, we see how radically the world shifted in the last 3 years. So we just don't know what it's going to be like in the next 5 years, because I think I've seen more cultural shifts in the last 5 years than in the last 25 years combined. And it's been pretty wild to see it. And I do think it is stemming from a very certain type of media. And it is an elitist media and a overly educated media that thinks they know better and thinks they know, or they have an agenda. That's the tough thing to really know, because there are a lot of smart people on TV, and you can talk about Chris Cuomo or Tucker Carlson. I think they're both complete jerk offs, but they both know exactly what they're doing. They both know exactly how to cater to their audience. They know how to fire people up, and they know how to get ratings. And at the end of the day, it comes back to the same thing I just said. It's money. And capitalism, while I believe in it and love it, it's a dangerous thing if it's left unchecked, because everybody does want to get theirs. And some people are willing to cross boundaries that I personally wouldn't, but that's what it is. So
it's very easy to be in sort of an echo chamber, and even with yourself, and not necessarily actively be doing something, but there's this subconscious passive narrative where we're filling, because we know it's like if I'm being paid lots and lots of money, it's very easy for me to just fall into the trap of, it's fine because I'm kind of being reinforced for, even if it's not like a wider conspiracy, it's kind of like this collective unconscious conspiracy. You know what I mean? I'm not a believer in a pre-written narrative that, XYZ is happening, but I do see how people work when we're in groups, and we tend to allow things to happen that kind of benefit us in some way, even if we in isolation wouldn't agree with it. It's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, they can justify it when you watch one side say stuff. I think there is an argument to be said, we got to convince people of the other side because they're so aggressive in the way they're talking about this. So I don't know. It's a fucked up system that I don't think I'm going to be able to fix, but hopefully somehow it all works out.
Sitting here in New Zealand, I'm always, because all of my clients are American, and I love you guys, but it's in comparison to New Zealand. I'm not going to throw the word crazy, but I am going to say that it's amazing to watch how sensationalized everything is in America.
Here,
ESPN sports, watching sports, or watching my clients on social media. It's a different level of energy, and I actually enjoy the passionate side of things, because that's where the creativity comes from, and pushing hard for things that you believe in. A lot of New Zealand is we have tall poppy syndrome, which is, you don't raise your hand up too high and say that you're any good, because you'll get it cut off, because we all need to be the same. And so there's definitely a difference in the culture, pros and cons, but I love watching what you guys are doing. Sometimes I'm thinking, holy crap. And other times I'm thinking,
what it is, it's just, our media and our entertainment are almost intertwined. It's obviously the biggest in the world. And, we do have, for the most part, lack of censorship, and where you can speak freely. But so much of it is mixed with, is it entertainment? Is it news? And what is it trying to do? And there's no way to stop it. And, who knows what we will go to in the next 5 years. But what I've seen in the last 4 years has just been the worst I've seen this country since I've been speaking. I know in the 60s, which is before me, civil rights, it was horrible and all this, but I've never seen more people that I know fighting with each other over things they don't even fucking know what they're talking about, and you can really, if you watch the news on either side, you can really start to rile yourself up about certain things and believe they're 100% true. Even though we ultimately find out most of them are lying about everything on both sides, so it's a shame.
The interesting thing that I've observed in New Zealand is that the difference is we kind of just go with what's being said. And so our government has been telling us stuff for the last 2 years. And so there's so many points along that didn't make sense or turned out to not be true. But we've kind of just glossed past it and just kind of continue on and all think that we're going to die. New Zealanders will go to the supermarket. We're all, because we've got mandates for everything, right? We're all masked up at the supermarket, and you walk past somebody and people will freak out that they're gonna.
I mean, it's that's all like what I'm talking about, and I don't understand what keeps happening to my door every 2 seconds. The door keeps opening, but the COVID thing is a perfect example, and I think we're gonna find out in a few years that like we're all really fucking duped, and while I do respect this disease and do believe it's very dangerous for people who are vulnerable, I just, when I see 20 somethings who are healthy walking around with masks on outside or alone in their car, I don't know what the fuck is going on. And I respect everybody's right to do what they want, but I think they've been suckered by some bullshit that I really don't even know what the end goal is. But if you saw in this country with Omicron, I mean, it was obvious from a minute one that it was going to be weaker. From minute one, we knew what was happening in South Africa, and the news every day was making it. We don't know. We did know. And then they waited, I don't know, 2.5 months to go, it actually is weaker. And I'm like, well, we already knew that. So they scare the shit out of you every day, turn you on, make you watch, make you think the cops are trying to kill you, make you think you're about to be carjacked. And then
they recategorized deaths in New Zealand from COVID by saying anybody who died within 28 days who's positive is now counted. And so instead,
even if they got hit by a car?
Well, there was actually a case in New Zealand, a guy got shot and died, but he was found to be COVID positive after. So he was a COVID statistic. And then people were, with that one, it seemed that people were like, hey, and so they came out and they said, no, we are going to change it. It's just currently the guidelines. But anyway, so what they do now is they just, everybody's COVID, and then they break it down and they say, probable COVID, maybe COVID, and they just happen to be positive. And my brain says, well, why are you even telling us that? Because they recently changed it, and so there were an extra 16 deaths or something. But they always say with COVID. They never say from or maybe a contributing factor, because then you just read this many deaths. Now, in the grand scheme of things, like, more people have died from overeating McDonald's in the same time period, but we haven't shut anything down.
No, I mean, again, it's. I fall somewhere in the middle. I think we should have tried to shut this down in the beginning. I think we should have tried to get everybody vaccinated, especially people over 50 years old. But now, to me, when the vaccination came out, to me, it's your personal responsibility now to take care of yourself in whatever way you see fit. And, they kept telling us the narrative, like I said, with Biden, that, you were going to spread it more likely if you didn't get vaccinated, which I think is pretty clear that that's not true anymore. And like I said, I rushed to get vaccinated. I believe that it works. I'm happy that I did it. But if you don't want to get vaccinated, go do what you want to do and be. But the masks, I just got off a plane, and wearing a mask, it's so ridiculous. And then like, oh, you take it off when you eat. It's all stupid. And what kind of masks? I've been saying for 2 years, I'm like, I know this fucking paper mask does not work. And the CDC, which the fact that anybody I know still goes, well, the CDC said, I'm like, who the fuck is the CDC? They're like a bunch of government hacks that for whatever reason are always behind everything, But anyway, what else are we talking about here?
Well, I want to transition here a little bit. Where can our audience find out more about what you're working on and follow you and check out your shows?
So we really go in detail. We did a live podcast from the set last week on Victory the Podcast and Hollywood Ways with a Z. We talk about all the details of this production. Again, not a lot of people have done this. We're making an independent pilot that we're paying for, funding, casting, doing everything ourselves. And now we'll figure out what's next. But we kind of went all in and did it. And we talk about every detail on both of those podcasts. Charlie Sheen will be on next week talking about how it was coming back. He hasn't worked in 5 years and what the whole process was like. So we go in depth, but it's also a good time. It's just like a lot of fun with your friends and, whatever. So that's it.
Last question, and I love asking everybody this because everyone gives their own unique spin on it, but what's the most important thing that you ever learned?
That I ever learned? That's a big question, but I don't know that I've learned it. I try always. And I mean, it's cliche, but enjoy it all because, I don't mean to be political again, but as you see in Ukraine or you see in Syria or you see in the Congo, like we're very fortunate to live in the places that we live. I'm very fortunate to get to do what I do, but you never know. You know, my friend Bob Saget died 3 months ago out of nowhere, and you never know when it's over. And I think the most important thing you can do is enjoy everything you're doing and find things that you love and try to do them to the best of your ability. And don't get a shelter dog.
I guess they bark too much. No, I love that. Enjoy it all, because you're right. Like 5 years ago, wherever you are now and having, you know, quote unquote problems, you were wishing that you would be having the ability to have those problems, you know, is the thing that I try and live by. And it's true. I got 2 kids. One of them's 3, one of them's 1. Both of them are a pain in the ass. 2 boys, full of energy, love them. But at the same time, when it's tough, if you're not able to enjoy that, I'm going to look back and I'm going to go, man, now they're just big and sweaty and even more annoying. And I miss their little baby faces. So I've got to enjoy it all.
My baby just opened the door. She knows I'm on a podcast, but she still had to come in. Right, Maya? So, but you know, and that with the kids, I mean, you'll see, you won't believe, like, again, it's cliched. You will not believe how fast it goes. And you won't believe, like, what the hell just happened. You know, my son was on Entourage. My daughter was on once or twice also, but my son played Ari's son, and now he's 20 in college, and, like, you know, it's bizarre. So yes, I think the thing I've tried to learn, I know it's the right thing, is enjoy it all, be a good person to the best of your ability, and, you know, drown out the noise. There's a lot of it in the world all over the place. And, you know, that doesn't mean you should ignore it, and you should do the best you can to be a good person and do as much as you can for whatever, you know, like I donated my fucking few $100 to Ukraine and to the dog shelter and to this. Hopefully it helps. I have no idea, but there's only so much you can do. And I think one of the things I try to live by is, like, really do around you first, really focus on the people and the world around you, and try to make that better, because we can't have that big of an impact on the entire world, unfortunately. And we have to watch things happen for whatever the reasons are they're happening. And, you know, at some level, pray that something gets better for whoever's going through this shit, you know? So
100%. Well, Doug, I really appreciate you for coming on. It's been
you
enjoyable.
got it, man. Be good. I'm glad I found you, because I was looking for this message. I was like, where is that message? Where do I find this? So anyway, be good. Hopefully I'll get to New Zealand soon. I'm planning on Australia for sure in 2023. So but
yeah, let's see if they'll let you in.
Yeah, well, I hope so by then. But all right, take care.
Take care. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Everything shared will be in the description of the episode, so you can go and grab that. Now, if you enjoyed the show and you want to listen to more, please subscribe, because every week we're releasing new episodes with inspiring people, successful people, so you can level up your game. So subscribe, and also leave us a review. We'd love to hear feedback about the show and your thoughts and opinions there as well. Now, if you want to have more success, whether it's in your life, whether it's in your business, we run live trainings every single week where you can get access to me to coach you through everything from health, wealth, success, business. We're doing topics on all things that you need to live a better, more inspired and successful life. Live trainings every single week. Just visit jamesnielsenwatt.com/live and you can get access to that. Now, there's also a ton of resources that you get for just listening to the show. All of that will be in the description. So if you are watching this on YouTube, check the description. If you're listening to this episode, check the description. We've got a load of resources there for you to have more success in your life, whether it's relationships, investing, or in business. I'll see you on the next episode. And as always, subscribe, leave a review, and tell your friends, because there's somebody else that needs to be hearing this, and maybe you're their opportunity to help them level up their game.